Matt is an old friend of the house. The first time Matt was here was 7 years ago, but let me tell you something. Matt spent much of the time teaching Python and data science. Also, he is well known wrote some books related to Python, to Pandas, to XGBoost. All these books are bestsellers and an incredible work with communities, with Jura Python, a lot of things. So, yeah, let's enjoy this incredible keynote.
Awesome. Thanks for that introduction, and thanks for letting me come back. Actually, the first time I was in Colombia was like, hace 30 años que viví en Colombia, pero vivía cerca de Bogotá, en Sogamoso, entonces su merced, mi español es un poco, no sé. Hablo un poquito de español, pero me falta mucho la práctica, entonces le voy a darles esta charla en inglés. But thank you for letting me come back, and thanks to everyone who organized this conference. I've been to a lot of conferences around the world, and this one is awesome. So can we get a round of applause for everyone who's doing this? Okay. Hola. Okay, so my goals here is I want to inspire you a little bit and hopefully learn along the way. I think AI is a topic that's on everyone's mind, and I want to maybe explore that a little bit with some of the stuff that I've been doing. So I asked AI, one version of AI, what I looked like, and it gave me this wonderful picture. Apparently I'm like a Steve Jobs-esque turtleneck, but instead of, I don't know what that collar thing is, and I carry around a yoga mat with me, and my eyes magically disappear into my glasses. This is one version of me. Here's another version. This is from what Microsoft thinks I am. So I opened up VS Code and I just started typing Matt Harrison is blah, 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 and it says, Python since 2000, okay, that's pretty good. Author of several books, that's true. Python trainer, okay. And then it kind of went on this, I don't know, Python Software Foundation Fellow, board member, vice chair, chair, emeritus board member, emeritus chair, emeritus vice chair. Kind of kept going on, and all of that is false. I'm not any of those, but thanks, Microsoft. I asked ChatGPT who I was, and so Chat had this to say, which is pretty good, except it said things like, he wrote Learning Python. I did not write that. I wish I did. And then at the bottom here, so it says, Matt's expertise extends beyond writing. He's a sought-after speaker and trainer who's delivered workshops and keynote speeches at various conferences around the world, including PyCon events in several countries. Mostly true. His presentations are known for being highly informative, engaging, and packed with practical insights that attendees can immediately apply to their work. So no pressure on me, right? Okay, so this is what I put about myself. So I spend a good deal of my time doing corporate training. I like to say that I sell snake oil and teach people to tell lies with data, but I go into companies and I help them level up their Python skills, and I help people learn from their data, make better models, leverage tools like Pandas, XGBoost, that sort of thing. Like I said, I have written multiple books. I have a CS degree, so my background is coming, even though I've worked as a data scientist, my background is coming from maybe, some people come to that from like the stats round. I came to it from the programming round. I've worked in a bunch of different varieties of verticals. I do have a family. My daughter is here with me. Olivia, say hi. So yeah, people said, when I thought you were bringing your daughter, I thought you were going to bring a baby. She's actually in studying computer science as well, so hopefully we can convince her to use Python. And then I like to run. Anyone in here like to run? Okay. I like to ski as well. Anyone here like to ski? Anyone seen snow in here? Okay. So I was talking with someone, they're like, I went on a hike and I saw snow. I'm like, I live in snow. I I like to play ultimate frisbee. Anyone like frisbee? Okay. I like to play Tejo. Anyone play Tejo? Okay. Awesome. So, you know, as I was doing that, different hands went up, you know, and my goal in this is not necessarily to brag, it's to show you that we have different experiences. And I think a lot of times we're bombarded with messages, especially on social media, from people who tell us that our worldview has to match their worldview. And my goal here is not to like cause you consternation or make you feel bad. My goal is to say, this is Matt, this is where I come from. If there's something that helps you or inspires you, that's great. I'm not doing this to make you feel bad. I think we need to be aware, especially with social media, of like what's influencing us. And if those influences are readily useful to us. Social media likes to push the outlier and the overnight success. And my experience, as I'll talk about in this talk, is that for most people, outliers are outliers. And most of us, the outlier path is not our path. So like I said, I do like to run a little bit. This is a run that I did not do. This is a 100-mile run in Utah where I live through the mountains. Basically, you like run up the equivalent of Mount Everest and then you run down it. Like I said, I didn't do this. I paced my friend who did this. I paced the last 25 miles with him. So like at 3 in the morning, I joined him and we ran up the side of this mountain and down through the dark and had a lot of fun. This is with my daughter Olivia, and this is actually very close to where that same picture was taken. So this is the winter where I live in Utah, and like I said, I like to ski as well. So I think it's awesome that we can, like someone asked me for advice, and I said, I think a piece of advice is like, get away from the binary and go out and do the analog and get some sun. I feel like oftentimes I have my best insights when I have my mind to myself, and I can just think on things, and I don't have a lot of influences coming into me other than like what my brain is telling me. Okay, so as I said, I like to write books. We're going to talk about books a little bit. We're going to talk about data, and we're going to talk about AI here. So has anyone read any of my books? Okay, so I have spent a good deal of time writing books, and this is my most recent book. I'm writing other books. Sadly, I couldn't bring a lot of books with me, but if you're interested in a book, I do have some stickers. And if you want to come get a sticker, I can give you like a code that will get you a digital book as penance for not bringing some books here. So I wanted to know, can AI help me write a book? And so as someone who, writes a lot, I thought, can AI like write a book for me? And I think a good metaphor for AI is a calculator. Generally, when we teach kids to do math, we teach them how to do addition and subtraction, and we don't give them a calculator immediately, right? After they've kind of learned how to do addition and subtraction and understand that, then we say, okay, now that you kind of understand the basics, you don't really have to do that anymore. You can just let this little thing, or now you can, ask your phone how to do that for you, right? But generally, we kind of teach them how to do that beforehand. And I like to think that AI is sort of like that calculator. And I think a good example of that for writing is like Grammarly. Anyone in here use Grammarly? I don't know, does Grammarly work with Spanish? Yeah? Okay. So as a writer, I make a ton of typos. And I think it's awesome that I can go in and like, they're just automatically outlined for me, and I can just click a button and say, fix this, right? It saves me a lot of time. The user experience is great. And I've taken grammar classes and I understand that, but that just makes my life a lot easier. So I think that the challenge for a lot of AI is to come up with a user experience that works with your process. And I think Grammarly does that quite well. Like chat is cool in that like you can just ask it things, but the user experience there, maybe not quite optimized. Okay, so again, to this notion, can AI write a book? So AI can help us with a lot of things if you want to write a book, right? AI can brainstorm for you. You can ask it to do some brainstorming. You can even say, like, write an outline after you've made this brainstorm. You can even say, like, write some paragraphs about this. And you can ask it, like, give me feedback on this writing, and it will do that for you. But AI can't do some of the other things that I think are required for writing a book. One of the problems that AI has is this notion of context length, where if I'm writing a book that's hundreds of pages long, and I want to have some notion of continuity through it, or following through examples, AI, and when I'm talking about AI, I'm generally talking about your basic Geminis or Chat GPT version 4X or whatever it is now, right? These generative AIs that people use, after you keep talking with them for a little bit, then they kind of forget what they were talking about, or they just sort of do what they're meant to do, which is like you give it some input and it gives you some output. So they're not really good at following through and connecting ideas, so to speak. I also like to put some diagrams in my book. I'm a huge fan of learning by visualizing things, and I think a well-formed diagram can tell a good story. And these tools can make okay diagrams, but if you want to do something complicated, it's very difficult to do. Another thing that they can't do is take feedback from a user. Like, generally, when I write a book these days, I have like 40 people review it. And I don't have a way for AI to like say, okay, push this magic button, and all of that gets fed back into my system, and then my book gets automatically updated. I don't know that that exists, right? That might just be a UX problem, but I can't do that. And then I put some stars by these last ones, right? Because AI is basically repeating the history of what it's trained on, if you think about how AI works, adding novel information is kind of hard. If you want to sort of push the boundaries of something, I mean, you could say that like a mashup might be novel, but to add really new novel information, it's kind of hard for AI because all it's doing is repeating the history of what it's trained on. And then the last one is create the final product, right? You can do all this work, but at some point you have to like collate it, collect it, make it into something that you can distribute or that your publisher wants. And so this notion here of like creativity, willpower, those are things that are hard to outsource. I can't just have AI do that for me. And I think that's what we want. I saw some rant the other day that said, you know, people are using AI to make music and art where I really want AI to do my dishes and wash the laundry, right? And so you could say that, you know, is there creativity in some AI, like the art of some AI? Maybe, right? But it is really just mashing up things together. And so the creativity, I think, comes from the human side of that. Humans are great at that notion of creativity, thinking outside the box, connecting things. Humans can understand context and connect that, take us through a path. Humans have empathy. I mean, I think these AIs might claim they have empathy, but I don't know really what that means. The notion of taking feedback and applying that to actually changing your work, that's something that humans can do. And like I said, humans are great at procrastinating, which I think is like the opposite of this willpower one, right? I mean, you can look at it like positive, like humans can do things. The reality is like humans also procrastinate a lot. So we can maybe leverage AI to take advantage of that because AI is really good at repetitive tasks. So if I have a task that I need to do repeatedly, right, AI can do pretty well at that. And AI can also, like I said multiple times, it is good at patterns, right, and repeating the history of what it's been trained on. So we need to be aware of what AI has been trained on if you want to take advantage of that, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Another thing to keep in mind, and as someone who runs their own business, you know, there's the nice and fun parts of the business, right? And then there's all the unglamorous parts that you don't hear about where it's like accounting, doing taxes, doing marketing, doing sales, for tech people who just want to be in front of a computer all day, it's nice to be in front of a computer, but you also, like in my case, if I'm on my own, I have to do all these other things like invoicing and that sort of thing. And one time I interviewed at Google, and I didn't get the job, but when I was there, I was talking to the person who I was interviewing with, and I'm like, okay, describe your normal day at Google. And this person went on to say, like, okay, I leave my home at like 6 in the morning, I get into work, I grab some food to eat, and then maybe check some email, and then I go have lunch, and then maybe I have some meetings, and then at the end of the day, I might do some work because I have time, and then I'll have some dinner, and then I'll go back home. And I was like, ooh, that's... okay, I'm kind of glad I didn't get the job because I really didn't want to spend all my life at Google. But the point was, and that after I heard this, I heard, the reason that Google was offering breakfast, lunch, and dinner was that most people are only productive for like 3 hours a day. And so if you can eke out an extra like 15 or 30 minutes of productivity, like the lunch and dinner totally pay for itself. So I've got this notion of like, we have a limited amount of capacity each day, right? And as you do things, your capacity for work kind of goes down. Can you use AI to do a lot of the stuff that's maybe rote and routine and leave extra space in your capacity to do things that actually matter? So one thing you can do is you can, just take an inventory of yourself. What things do you do every day, right? And maybe write those tasks, and then think about, reflect on what things can AI do, right? So for me, like I do a bunch of corporate training where I'm either on Zoom or I'm flying somewhere, and then I'm like talking to people about Python or Pandas or XGBoost and how to use those. It's like, can AI help me there? I can't really send a robot that does that right now. I mean, there's a ton of material online, but the whole purpose of like them hiring someone like me is because they have someone that they can interact with who understands their problem, who's been doing this for many years, and can give them feedback and can oftentimes see things that they can't see because I've been doing it for a long time. So there are some things that maybe AI could help with, but a lot of that is not really outsourceable. We talked about writing books and how some of that can be aided by AI, but some of it can't be. And then, I have all these company tasks, these unglamorous things that I have to do, like HR and finance and those fun things. So maybe I'll try and take one of those tasks and see if I can use AI to help me with it. So I'm going to talk about accounting a little bit. Anyone here an accountant? Okay, a few people. Okay, awesome. Well, if you're here, you're like a cutting-edge accountant. That's awesome. Actually, everyone who's here is, we talk about outliers. I'd say that most people who are here are actually outliers because most people don't go to conferences. So kudos to you for sort of, investing in yourself and being an outlier here. But one thing I have to do occasionally is I need to like summarize my financials, right? And so I do sell books and courses, and I sell them on different platforms. So I thought, can I take AI, and can AI help me do this? And so I've done this before, and I've written multiple books on pandas. So I'm like, okay, I can use pandas to do this. I've done this before. And, in the past when I've done this, it's like 100 lines of code to do this or something like that. So, can I use pandas to do this? And talking about that notion of like that 3-hour capacity of work, there's also the notion, like some studies have said, that a programmer writes like 10 lines of code per day. Like the average programmer writes 10 lines of code per day, which might seem low to some, might seem high to others. But if this problem is 100 lines of code, that's 10 days of work to do that. There's a caveat of some code that's greenfield you can probably spit out faster than other code. But writing code is mentally taxing, and as I'm writing that code, I'm reducing my capacity to do other things, like like this financial statement, I need it to give to my accountant, but I don't necessarily need it to make money. It's not necessarily going to help me make money, so to speak. So I'm kind of using my energy to do something that might not pay off in the future. So can I maybe leverage AI and help me do this? That's sort of my question here. Okay, so I'm going to walk you through what I did to do this. And I used our friend Chat to do this. And so these are some of the prompts that I asked Chat. I said, okay, I have an export of my Amazon sales, and I want to merge it with Podia, which is where I sell other stuff. Generate a report and possibly a forecast. Can you give me an outline of suggested steps to take? And Chat's like, sure, you can do this and this and this. Okay, I'm like, awesome, thanks. So the next thing I asked, I said, will you help me with those steps? And then I said, I'll tip you $5 if you do a good job. Do you know if that you offer to tip Chat, it will actually do better? Like, people have done studies on this. So, yeah, I don't know if it works with pesos or not, but, and people have actually gone through and like figured out like what the proper amount to tip is. But like if you're nice to Chat, apparently Chat is nice back to you. So Chat wanted to help me, and I said, okay, let's start off with step number 1. And I said, I want to do this with Jupyter. Tell me what to do. And it gave me these things, these steps of what I needed to do. And I was kind of like, I mean, like I said, I've done this before. I walk people through this stuff like this all the time, so I'm not naive to this. But I kind of wanted to see if Chat could kind of walk me through this step by step. And so it gave me some things to do. I loaded the data after I did that, and I said, okay, I loaded the data, and then I said, here's 5 sample rows from each. Suggest cleaning steps so they can be merged and analyzed. And so it came back and it gave me some code, gave me some Pandas code to do that. And then I said, okay, now that you have the sample data, let's outline the cleaning steps to prepare this data. The goal is to ensure that the data is consistent, relevant columns are aligned, and unnecessary information is removed or standardized. And it did some code that looked like it did that. And then I said, okay, write this function for both Podia and Amazon because the data is different in both of those. So that was kind of the process that I went through for doing this. And here's the code that it came out with to load my initial data set. It looks something like this. So who here uses Pandas? Okay, so a lot of people in here use Pandas. This might look pretty familiar to you. So the first thing up here is we're going to take this date column and we're going to convert it to a date. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to drop a bunch of columns here. And then after that, we're going to rename some columns. Then we're going to add a source column that says that this is from Podia. And then we're going to return the data frame. So this looks like kind of run-of-the-mill Pandas code. So I have some issues with this. So one of them is, and these might seem sort of like, why are you complaining about this? But I think as an educator, my goal, you know, when people ask like, what is good code for me? My goal, I tell them, my goal is that I want you to write readable code for your audience. Okay, so there's a caveat there for your audience. Oftentimes I'll post code on social media and I'll get people who say, this code is awesome, this style of code changed my life, and then I'll get other people who say things like, this is the worst code ever, you would get fired if you worked at my company, I would always reject this code review. And so I get that, like, you know, one thing that, you know, maybe if you want to get good reviews on your code, you know, post it on social media and say that it's the best code ever. That's probably a good way to get people telling you about what they don't like about your code. But let me maybe dive into this a little bit for people who are using Pandas to kind of talk about some of the things that might be interesting for using Pandas. So the first one, I prefer not to use drop here. So this is using drop right here. And basically, if you're not familiar with Pandas, Pandas is a tabular representation of your data. And this is just saying we're going to drop out some of the columns, remove some of the columns that we don't need. So what's the issue with drop? It's not that drop in and of itself is inherently bad. But remember, my goal is to write code that's readable. My goal is not to write code that's easy to write. I think those are two different things. I want to write code that's readable. And so code is generally written like once or twice, but it's read multiple times. If I use drop, what I'm telling the end user these are the columns that I don't care about, right? However, you can look at this on the flip side. I can say, instead of dropping, I'm going to explicitly select things that I do care about, right? I'm telling the user when they read that code, these are the things that you care about. And later on, I'll say how that can be useful in other contexts as well. Another thing that I don't like about this is this thing here, in place is equal to true. Does anyone use that in Pandas? Okay. Okay. Okay, anyway, yeah, that's super common to use. A lot of people do that. I don't like it because it mutates the data. And people say that like mutating the data is a way to save memory, it's a way to make things faster. And it turns out that in Pandas, that's just generally not the case. What it does do is it makes it so when you run your code, you can't rerun your code because the data frame has changed behind the scenes. But if you're using it to like save memory, you're not really going to save memory by doing that. So my trick around doing mutation is this notion of chaining. And the thing I'll talk about that in a little bit, but like the thing I want to kind of make clear is that this is what chat gave me. And having written like 3 different Pandas books and talking to multiple Pandas developers and teaching Pandas all over the world, I have some pretty strong opinions about what Pandas code should look like, but chat disagrees with me, right? And I think part of this is because what is chat trained on, right? Chat is trained on what's on the internet, and a lot of things are what's on the internet is someone thinking, okay, I just learned about this Pandas thing, and someone said if I wrote an article that says 20 things about Pandas that you might want to do, that I'll get a lot of attention, and then maybe I'll get a job if I do that. And there's nothing wrong with like getting attention and getting a job, but I think there's a lot of material out there that's pushing bad content and bad practices about Pandas, and that is what is training AI here. Okay, so my take on this is this is the Pandas chaining master. Note that he's got a Pandas necklace and he's got a bunch of chains here. But chaining is the notion that most of the 400 different operations that you can do in Pandas, and when I say 400, I'm kind of exaggerating. There's like 420. Most of this super wide API, they will return Pandas objects. As when you pass something into it, it will pass out a data frame or a series when it comes out of that. And you can use that to write code in a way that looks like this. So this is an example of code that like people hate. But this is an example of chaining. So at the top here, I've got a variable that says like, these are the columns I want to keep. So I'm being explicit about this. When someone comes to this code, they should know by reading it what columns are in the final output, right? Wouldn't that be nice if you can come to your code and you can immediately know what columns you're keeping instead of knowing, well, I know this column isn't in there because I'm dropping it. So then we have that. And then it put in this here. So this is actually me telling it to like convert it to chaining. So put in this copy here. This is actually not necessary. But who uses copy in their Pandas code? Okay, a lot of people, some people. Okay, so if you do chaining, you actually never need to use copy here. So that's another benefit here. And you know, there's some weird errors that you get in Pandas that say like you're trying to change a view in Pandas, and most people don't know what that means. So they like go in and throw in a bunch of copies, and then this warning kind of goes away, and no one really understands what's going on there. But copy is sort of like how a lot of people think to fix that. Whereas if you just use chaining, you never see that error. And then here I've got this assign. And assign is another one that's like not very well known, but super useful. What assign does is it creates new columns or updates updates columns, but it returns a new data frame instead of mutating a data frame. And so this basically says we're going to take the date column, we're going to convert it to a date, we're going to add a source column, and I'm going to create this upsell detected column. Okay, after I do that, I'm going to sort my values by date, I'm going to keep these columns, and I'm going to rename these columns here. Okay, so this still isn't perfect. Again, this is what chat gave me after I did some nudging for it to do some chaining. I think it's better. Again, I'd probably like to have that columns to keep as the very last thing, just as a hint to the reader that like this is what you're going to get out of this. But I think this is closer to how I would like to write Pandas code. So that was with one data set. I asked our friend to do that with the other data set, and it gave me something that looks like this. So I think this is, so a lot of people will look at this and they're like, that is a lot of code, right? And their brains kind of explode and they're like, I'm going to reject that pull request when you have that code that looks like that, or how do you debug this code? And you know, when I'm writing code like this, I mean, chat wrote this code, but if I'm writing code like this, I'm testing it along the way, right? So just my advice for people who are writing Pandas code, like manually, like I will make a little function that cleans it up, but I'll just do each of these steps. When you write a code in the chain like this, it reads like each individual step of the recipe. These are the things that I'm going to do. And you can actually just run this, and using tools like Jupyter makes it really easy just to run and test it. And you know, you build this up, and at the end, you have your input and your output, and you're good to go, generally. And also, you don't have, you know, another thing that people tend to have in their notebooks is like df1, df2, df3, df256. Does this sound familiar to anyone? Okay. Or they have like Untitled Notebook 1, Untitled Notebook 2, Untitled Notebook January 21st, Untitled Notebook January 23rd, right? Where they don't want to delete data or they don't want to lose anything, but they haven't really come up with a good process for doing that, right? So one of the things that's nice about this chaining is you build up this code, stick it into a function, and then you just put it at the top of your notebook. When you want to come back to your notebook, you run the cell at the top that loads the raw data, and then you run the next one that cleans up your data, and you're kind of good to go. If your boss asks you, what happened to that data? You know, how did you get this? You have the recipe, that chain code that tells you exactly what happened from the raw data to the cleaned up data right there. Okay, so our next step after we have these two data sets sort of cleaned up is to merge them. And again, I asked our friend Chat to help. And this is a case where it's like, I think that the UX for AI is a place where if someone can get this UX right, it can be a huge win. Like I said, I think Grammarly is an excellent UX because it's just there, right? I actually wish Grammarly worked better on my phone because apparently I make a ton of typos on my phone. But like if I'm on the computer, anything that I pull up in a browser, Grammarly is going to check for me, which is awesome. But like this code here, it's like, okay, I've got this, and now I want to merge the data. We can get code that will merge it, but then I might look at the code that merges it, and that might give me insight of like, okay, here's the code that merges it, which is okay code, but it's doing some renaming of the columns here to like align them before I merge them. And after I look at this, I think maybe I want to push that renaming back up into my other functions. So it's just where it cleans up the code, and then after I've cleaned it up, I can do that. There's not really good user interface. I've used PyCharm, I've used VS Code, do a lot of Emacs. There's not really good UX for doing that like with AI. So I think, you know, if AI can solve something like that, it might be useful. So my typical back and forth is like copy something, paste it into chat, take the output of chat, paste it back into my code, and make sure that I understand what's being copied there. You know, Pandas does help here a little bit because you can actually paste your data to a clipboard or read it from a clipboard. And like I use a Mac, there's an app called Mackie on the app, which actually keeps a queue of all of what you've copied, which is actually pretty nice if you're like going back and forth with OpenAI, right? And similar things exist for Windows or Linux if you want to use those. But I think the UX is a place where AI, you know, if you're working on AI, make sure that you are considering what that user interface is. I know that everyone thinks that chat is the world's greatest interface. I think it's really cool for demos, and like normal people can like look at that and tell it to do something, but when you want to be productive, it's kind of annoying. Okay, so after I did this, then I asked chat to like summarize my cells, and it looks something like this. Now, I do this sort of thing with clients all the time, right? So this is cells. Note the cells is going from 2011 to 2024. So there's like 13 years of cells here. This is about when I started kind of going on my own. And you see that like Pandas only shows the first 5 rows and the last 5 rows. And generally when I show something like this to a client, they're like, I want to see all the rows, right? You're only showing me the first 5 and the last 5. And I like to tell my clients, if you have that urge to, I want to see all the rows, that's like the person who's like, I want you to export this to Excel. Just give it to me in Excel, right? Which is fine, right? I mean, sometimes your boss wants Excel, but I typically say, if you have that urge, it's like, I want to change the default settings in Pandas to see more rows, your spidey sense should go off, and you should instead think, okay, how can I use a computer, which is good at filtering out things, to pull out the rows that I want to use? Or how can I use a computer to visualize what's going on here? Humans are optimized for like looking at charts and visualizations and telling a story from them. Computers are optimized for sifting through data. So I actually asked Chat, I said, will you draw a picture of a human who is optimized for looking at tabular data? I once had a client and they're like, we've got 300 columns and we've got 50,000 rows. We just want to like, our people just like, they like data and they like to scan through the data, right? And they just want to look at all those spreadsheets. And so this is what ChatGPT said a person who is evolutionized or evolved over time to look at tabular data looks like. So I don't know. Maybe some of you out there. So this is kind of, I think it's funny, but maybe, I don't know. So I asked it, like, what's up with this goatee thing here? And I said I would give it a tip if it told me what that was. So it gave me, what Chat does. It tried to make me happy. It's like, this is a highly evolved human optimized for reading spreadsheets, blah, blah, blah. And then the next paragraph says, throughout history and in various cultures, beards and goatees have been associated with wisdom, knowledge, and experience. In the context of being evolved for data analysis, the goatee might symbolize the culmination of human intellect and analytical prowess, akin to the bearded sages of ancient lore. So whatever that means. Apparently I did not shave down here, so I'm getting closer to that bearded sage, tabular, whatever. Okay, back to what we were talking about. I asked, so remember I said, if you have that urge to like look at more data, you should instead try and think of a way like, can I visualize this, or can I use the computer to look at this? Okay, so I asked it to visualize this, and this is the code that Chat gave me to visualize this, and it looks something like this. Okay, so is this the world's greatest plot? No, I mean, there are things that I like hate this, and I've talked to multiple people about this, and they're like, that's a feature, not a bug. Anyway, but I think this tells a story, right? And there are a couple things that I want you to pay attention to here. One is that, like, if you look at the first, 3 or 4 years of, like, my work, it's pretty flat, right? And again, we're so conditioned to, like, social media, or people are like, last year I was in the ditches, and this year I'm awesome, and all I had to do was this, right? And I think, yeah, that's great for social media, and it gets eyeballs, but most of us aren't on that path, right? Most of us have a limited ability to grow, but if we keep at it, we can grow over time. And you can see, like, there's a little step function. That might have been when a new book was released, and there's like a blip here. That might have been when a new book or something was released. But as you keep adding to these things, they keep compounding here. So, advice on, people ask me, like, if I'm starting out, what advice would I give you? And one of the pieces of advice I would give is to understand this notion of investing in compound interest, right? And so compound interest is neither good nor bad. It's just math. But what makes it good or bad is it depends on what side you're on in that. So I can give a quick story. of someone who was maybe a little bit foolish with compound interest. This was a person I saw quite frequently, and they're in a job that they didn't like, and they knew that I did Python and I taught people Python, and they came up to me one day and they're like, hey Matt, I want to be a programmer. I'm like, okay, here's 3 options that I'd recommend. Actually, 2 that I'd recommend. One would be like go to the university and get a degree. The second one would like be go to a boot camp and kind of work your tail off and understand what programming is. Like, no, I want to do it cheap. Like, okay. I'm like, well, I wrote a book about learning Python. Here's a book you can have. I'll give it to you, right? And they're like, awesome. And I saw this person repeatedly, and every time I would come up to them, they're like, hey, Matt, I want to learn Python. I'm like, great. How is the book reading going? Well, I didn't read it, right? And this went on for actually multiple years. And at some point, I did the calculus, and it was like, this person could have already gone to the university and graduated from the university and got a degree, and if they were employed, they would have paid their degree off by then, right? But they were so focused on being cheap and not willing to invest in themselves that they just sort of stayed where they were, right? So investing is a risk, right? And we have to put something into it. And I'm not saying that everyone needs to go to college necessarily, or that everyone needs to go to a boot camp. Certainly people can be programmers without doing that, but I would say that generally those people are the outliers, because we're bombarded generally when people are like, oh, there's like tons of content on YouTube of like, I don't know, Harvard or MIT of how to be a PhD in math or computer science. It's all out there for free, right? But why aren't people doing that? Because they'd rather sit back and watch Netflix or scroll through shorts, right? That's what the computers have learned what we like. And it turns out that, who knew? Learning is actually hard. It requires effort for us to learn, right? And so if you can't figure out a way to hack yourself so that you learn, you'll probably just do what most people do, right? Also, the other thought from this chart is like that overnight success. Those tend to be the outliers, right? If you want to build something up, it takes a long time. And then my last thought on this is invest in yourself. You will hear companies tell you that you are family, that our culture is the best culture, that we do everything right, and that you should stay here for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, right? And that might be great. You might feel good about your company, and you might have good relationships. But bosses change. Financial times change. People who have worked at big companies, after 15 years, get layoffs at 3 in the morning that they didn't know about, right? So as much as companies want to be your family, companies are not your family. And the best investment you can make is in yourself. Okay, so I went through a similar process for this for XGBoost. I'm not going to show that here, but again, I've done this. I use XGBoost all the time, and it did okay. It wasn't great, but my thought as I was doing this was like, okay, if someone had no clue what they were doing, and they were like, okay, chat, I want you to make a forecast with me with this data, they would be completely lost. The chance of them being able to do that would be very difficult. Okay, so who here has heard of polars? Okay, some of you. Who's used polars? Who's used polars in production? The brave few. Okay. Okay, so as an educator, like I take it as maybe a badge of pride that like when I'm talking about Python, I tell people why Python is slow, right? Or like warts and issues that they'll run into with Python. Do the same thing with pandas, right? Pandas is not perfect. It's very popular, but it's not perfect. And there's this new library called polars that wants to kind of eat pandas for lunch. I mean, they're kind of friendly, but the idea with polars is that it cleans up a lot of pandas' warts, so to speak. So whereas pandas is sort of naive, it just does things as you ask it to do things, polars actually takes into account that like we've got 50 years of database experience, like optimizing queries and doing things with tabular data. So why don't we incorporate that into a data frame? And so that's what polars is. It's like a query engine with a data frame API on top of it. So it's written in Rust, and that allows, not Rust, but just because it's a data frame engine, it can be smarter than Pandas and it can be faster than Pandas. And one of the things that enables that is this notion of chaining. So if you chain with polars, you can actually say like, scan this CSV file and then do all these other things. And at the end, you have maybe some pivot or something, and it knows through all these chains of operations that I only need to read these 3 columns from the CSV. I don't need to read all the columns. And actually, I filtered out some rows, so I don't even need to read all the rows. It can push those operations up because it has a query engine. It also can do things like actually use cores on your machine, which is kind of nice since most machines have more than 1 core, since about 2000 now. But guess what? AI is horrible at polars. How do I know? I wrote a book on polars. I teach polars. I use polars quite a bit. And AI can't do it, right? Because, well, it's pretty new, right? There's not a lot of training data. And also, like, people are like, I'm not using Stack Overflow anymore. I'm just using chat to answer my questions. Well, if chat was trained on Stack Overflow, but now people aren't using Stack Overflow, I don't know what's going to happen there. So that's kind of, I don't know, an existential crisis that I guess the programmers will have to solve. So I'm happy to talk more about polars if you want to like talk to me out after. So to wrap up, like I said, I like to run, and my take is that our career is not a sprint. As much as social media likes to say things are sprints, our career is like one of these ultra marathons, right? And so the key in an ultra marathon is to move forward, make progress bit by bit by bit, right? So you need to start not necessarily running, but you need to start moving, getting into action. This is another picture from an ultra marathon that I paced. So this was another 100-mile. I was supposed to do like 18 miles of this. So typically you do it like a 4 to 5 mile per hour pace. So it's like 4 to 5 miles, 4 to 5 hours it should have taken us. The thing is that it rained and snowed for like 3 days before this race happened. So the trails, instead of being like the dry, dusty trails that are typical in Utah, were like 6 inches of like thick mud like this. And our, leisurely 5-hour run ended up taking like 14 hours to do that. And the person who was planning on finishing this race in under 24 hours took like 38 hours to do the race. Through snow, conditions like this, I would have given up, right? I would have said, nope, I'm going and watching Netflix in shorts. But this person did not, right? They were committed, and they were going to finish it out, whether it took 24 hours or 38 hours. So you got to figure out what makes you committed, right? Investing and compounding, right? You got to choose which side you're going to be on. I've witnessed multiple times, if you don't invest in yourself, you're going to be degrading, right? However, if you invest in yourself, you will see the improvements on that. So this is not huge stuff, but this is bit by bit. Okay, so people ask me, is AI going to get rid of programmers? I don't think so. I think for people who are snake charmers, who are experts, who know how to handle the snake, they can offload some of these menial tasks. And like, for example, because I knew how to do that forecast or that report, it took me like 30 minutes to do, right? To have chat do all that for me. Conventional wisdom says that's 100 lines. It would take 10 days to do that. But I know in the past, it could take me like a half day to do that, right? So I went from 30 minutes from 4 hours to 30 minutes. That's a huge savings, right? But it's because I knew exactly what I needed to do, right? If you don't know what you need to do, you're like this person who doesn't know how to use the tool. And AI is going to happily lead you down a path. AI leads you down a path, right? It tells you some history. But if you don't know what it's telling you to do, and you just follow it, I think you're going to be worse off than you were without it. So my challenge to you is to do the things that humans do that AI cannot do, right? So you want to connect with others. You want to make that effort to invest in yourself. and figure out what causes you to learn. That's my talk. Thank you.
Wow.